So we have a free night this evening here in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Had a client this morning, or today actually, in Mackinac City, down by the bridge, Sheboygan County actually, here in Michigan. And we have now moved up here to the Germfask area in our Upper Peninsula, and staying here at the Northland Outfitters camp. It was an old fishing camp here on the river, and now we kind of have an evening free here that we are finishing up today's design and getting ready for tomorrow's project just outside of Germfask here. And what that leads us into is we're going to talk about a topic here, why we build transition areas. So it's a pretty in-depth process of building a transition area. So we're going to pick the top 3 reasons why we build them and kind of tie that into today's video. The number 1 reason why we build these transition areas, out of 3 in no particular order except for the number 4, is the main one, but we're going to leave that for the kind of the bonus, if you will. But the number 1 topic here that we're going to talk about, number 1 reason, is to build to promote and build a travel pattern. Now, a lot of the areas that I go to, we see that there are a lot of pieces of a puzzle on a property that don't fit, or they don't make complete sense, right? There's stuff scattered. You hear me talk about placing buck bedding pockets out in the center of the property. Nothing faces or connects back to the transition at your points of impact, stuff like that. So the number 1 reason that we build them is to promote that line of travel. That line of travel, if for example, you've heard me say this in the past, but I'll say it again, as I always start this topic with my clients as well, is if we start in your southeast corner, let's say, of your property, we are going to end up back in that corner when we are done. And without promoting that, or promoting it, finding out how wide we have to open that up, do we have to mulch it? Is it one of those cases that we have to open that up to 20 feet, at least 20 feet wide, to get that that proper sunlight to the forest floor to get some regeneration? We figure that out as we go along that pattern. We are actually actually placing the tree stand locations in place. We're ribboning them off as we go, and we are finding the other attractants that we're going to talk about here in number 2, what needs to be placed where along that transition. So the number 1 thing, to promote the line of travel. So just as we touched on there a little bit in number 1, the second thing is the reason that we do this is to place your plots and your attractants on that line of travel, that transition area. So the attractants would be your mineral stations, your water holes, the licking branches, and also your food plots. Now, I get that question a lot, is why do we put the food plots on the transitions? Well, one reason is because we should all be promoting long linear food plots and not big round or oval. I guess oval's better than square plots or round plots, right? But as you create your transition area going around the outside of the perimeter, from the perimeter in, then you're able to have that transition. That transition area, obviously, is your food plot has to be a part of that transition area. Once you get that established, then what that does is it's pretty much making or designing your length of your plots, and then all you have to figure out is the width and how they fit them and keep them hidden between contour. Time and time again, I see that folks want to stretch their food plots out too long, and they take it over top of a ridge system, and what happens is now they're exposed, and that end of the plot is what gets you into trouble as far as getting picked off when you're getting in and out of your stand locations. Obviously, our stands aren't on the food sources, so you're really kind of picking away there as far as setting the transition, figuring out where that needs to be, and then that tells you where that your plots fall into or onto that transition. Your attractants, as far as minerals, we try to promote putting the the minerals, depending on the parcel, depending on your region. Sometimes we'll put the mineral between stand location and the food plot, and the reason is a food plot is your destination, right? Your food plot is already an attractant, so we try to keep them separate. As far as the food plot, you'll see that my soft mass trees, my apple trees and stuff are on the entrances and the exits of the food plots, so that's on the transition as well. And then also between the stands and your food plots, that's a good spot to put your minerals. Now at the stand location, one of the attractions is the water holes. You know, the power of having that water hole, not at every stand location obviously, but for example, 40 acres you might have 2, you know, an 80 you might have 2 or 3, depending on, is there any other stagnant water, is there any other ponds that are already built, all that plays into it. So that's the process of building the transition, so you know where to place all the other attractants along that transition area. The third thing is just knowing your pressure limits. One of the reasons to build a transition area is so you know not to penetrate, how far you need to penetrate in and how far not to penetrate into your farm. Time and time again, I see folks, building, focusing on your buck bedding areas or your pockets first, and then wanting to go in and hunt those locations and penetrating too far into the farm to get that huntability out of those areas done. And what you're doing is that leads us into number 4. But what you're doing is you push too far internal of the property, and you're not you don't have any of that set aside area, that sanctuary area left for the any deer in general, but the mature bucks to call home. So the fourth topic is probably the most important, and that's why I left it for the last here. So that's the last topic that we're going to talk about in the 3 reasons. So the fourth, as a bonus, is the reason that we create transition areas is to create a core. Without a transition area, you've heard me talk about this again, I touched on this a little bit in the last video last week, is without a transition area, you do not have a way to build a core. You don't know how big the core is. You could be, are you taking your stand location in? Are you just drawing that rim around and kind of guessing how much of a core you have? That's why I build the transition as we go. You're setting your stands. You're setting so anywhere from your stand internal is the core. Your transition is part of your core. Your licking branches are part of your core. Any of the attractants, any of your food plots, anything that fall on that transition is part of the core. So taking that into consideration, there's no really set there's no really set percentage that you need to have as far as how much should be a core. It's great to think that obviously more than half of the property is a core, but that all is determined by the contour. That's all determined on is part of it is do you have a 40 and there is 10 acres of it is a marsh where you can't go out and cross it. You have to go on the edge of it, use that edge. So your transition area already you're working off from 30 acres instead of 40 to begin with, and then you take because your stand locations might be 50 yards off the fence row, and the next one might be 75 yards off the fence row. The next one, because of contour or something you had to go around, might be 100 yards in. So your tree stands, and then obviously I like to hang the licking branches in the transition areas out about 25 yards out in front of the stand location. So that's what starts, those licking branches are obviously in the transition areas. So that's what starts your starts and creates your transition area. So like I said, that rim all the way around the outside of the property is your core, that creates your core. The rim around the outside of the property is where you do your TSI, you do your select cutting. So everything from the tree stand in can be included in your core. Now, if you have a square 40, your core should never be a complete square 20 in the center. That's one of the topics, that we'll kind of touch on here. So the ending of the video here is, what I see a lot of is I see, and I'll draw it out here and kind of, use that as a reference. But I see a lot happening is I see a square 40 and folks just drawing a certain area of a corner out and saying, okay, this is going to be my sanctuary and I'm never going to go in there. Or you take the center of your property and you create a complete square, and that's my my core. But your core should never be square. Your core, and the reason for that is if you have someone design your property or you're designing it, and you have a square 40 or a rectangular shape 80, and your core is completely square rectangular shape, you know that somebody didn't do their homework, or you yourself didn't implement that transition, because your tree stands will never be exactly 50 yards off the fence row all the way around it from the outside in. So your core is going to be determined by contour. It's going to be determined by edge that's already there. Roads, all that stuff play into that. No, not at all, sir. No, not at all. Thank you. I appreciate that. So if you follow that all the way around the exterior, that is what creates the core. So them are the four main reasons why we create a transition area, and those are the four main reasons to the reasons to focus on. And once you have a good understanding of why this transition area, this transition build, or this transition area is something that I feel so strongly about, you'll soon understand all the benefits that come from that. And one, like we said, the number 4 there, but the most important is it builds a core.